Going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the 48th episode of the Hagwon Startup Podcast, the podcast that addresses topics relevant to the discussion of anything and everything to do with living and working in South Korea, in and around South Korea. Welcome specifically to South Korea. Welcome back to the 48th episode of the Hagwon Startup Podcast. Let me just shut myself up here for a second. The podcast. Thank you. Just tuning off. I like to start the podcast with having some background feedback to know that it's actually streaming and everything's going well, and it seems like everything is going well, so that's great. I'm your host, Jack. I know I don't do it enough, maybe, in self-introductions, and I'm not going to, but just the quick synopsis. I've been in Korea for 15 years, over 14 years, teaching all throughout the time. I've taught in universities for 7 years nearly, I believe, and my wife and I have been running our Hagwon, our English language school, for the past 3 going on 4 years, I believe. We just celebrated our 3-year anniversary this past October. So in today's topic, what I would like to talk about a little bit, so as such, I'm not claiming, I guess this is kind of a disclaimer, I'm not claiming to be an expert of any kind when it comes to running Hagwons or running language schools, but I do claim that I have a little bit of experience in that field, and I can, provide some background advice on what's happening, or some inside information to what's happening in my business, in our business, my wife's and my business, and how things are going, and hopefully some of it will be helpful. So today I kind of wanted to talk about the topic brought to light, which is let me transition here to because I see there are some comments, which is fantastic. Bruno, hi Bruno, Rit, welcome. I was wondering about that feedback sound. Okay, well, it's gone now, I believe, hopefully. So, where was I? Oh yeah. So the topic I wanted to talk about was starting an English language school. So today, what I'll talk about briefly about this topic, and I didn't want to squeeze in the entire length of it. The aim of it was, should I start a Hagwon or an English language school, and also motivations and indecision or lack of decision-making abilities, which I've struggled in the past, and I think I've managed to overcome for the time being. So, yeah, let's get cracking. I wish I had some more special effects to get things organized. Anyway, so whether or not to start an English language school, clearly it's a big question, because just like any other business, starting a language school can be pretty daunting. It can be pretty intimidating and scary, just like anything else would be. And right now, to be honest, when I think about what my wife and I are doing, what we're undertaking, it feels like a huge undertaking right now. So for those who don't know, we are presently in the process of expanding our flagship Shane English here school into a larger building with more rooms, with more floors, and we'll be adding a kindergarten program to our existing elementary school program. And the reason why we're adding it is because we do have it. Our head office, our franchise head office has a kindergarten program that we simply have not been using so far, but now finally we've decided to implement that. And so in order to do that, we need a lot more space because, and clearly the facilities and the amenities that are required to run a program of that sort. And so with that involved, there's a lot of expenses, additional expenses, overhead costs, which is scary, considering that we are still in the process of working towards, acquiring a larger clientele. We have an elementary school clientele, but in terms of our kindergarten clientele, it's still relatively small because, like I said, we haven't really expanded on that right now. So when I look at the kindergarten aspect or that part of our business, it's almost like starting from scratch. So while we're carrying over our existing elementary program, we are basically just beginning to add a kindergarten program, which is, like I said, it's in the early stages of development. And so it does feel like moving an existing school to a larger facility and adding this additional program feels like it feels like it did when we were first beginning our first Hagwon here, when we were just opening up. There are so many decisions to be made. Obviously, they're a little bit different, right? But there are so many decisions that needed to be made, and oftentimes the feeling is of feeling overwhelmed, scared, quite frankly, in many a time, and uncertainty, and all these feelings are very similar to what I felt when we first opened up the Hagwon. So I remember 4 years ago when we were just 2016. So I guess three years ago. Okay, 3 years ago, when we were just beginning to look for a school. So initially we had to make the decision of whether to start, right? That's the first thing. You need to decide if you want to actually start a Hagwon. So we decided to do it. And that is a decision that kind of links into the indecision or the decision, the ability to make a decision, which I will talk about a little bit later. But we decided to do it. Now is a big thing. Taking that first step and making that decision to actually start a business or start a language school is huge. And I guess the amount of work that you put into backing that decision up is up to you. I've just been listening to a podcast now, and it went into a lot of the very nitty-gritty business aspects that I've heard so much before about. And honestly, when I listen to these things, I get a headache, as I was right before I started my podcast here. There's just so much detail that some people like to involve into starting a podcast, and there's just so much that some people from the business aspect of it like to talk about, that it becomes overwhelming. And possibly I think listening to other people can be very overwhelming, and unnecessarily so. Because really, when you decide to start a business, I think as an individual, you already have the smarts and the ability to follow through, and it's just a matter of listening or of reading a little bit more about starting a business and the hows and kind of the clockwork of how things should be done properly. But there is such a thing as overreading and over-listening and just overthinking things. And I'm not saying you should completely dismiss every piece of information. Clearly, that's not the case. But try not to overthink things. So I guess once you decide to start a business, start your own language school, let's just keep it at the Hagwon. Yeah, because every time I say start a business, I don't know, feels like I'm being all grandiose. I'm not. I have no idea about businesses, but I know a little bit about English teaching and running a Hagwon after the 3 years. So, you need to figure out, the second step would be figuring out, I guess, why you are starting the business, why you want to start a language school, why you want to start a Hagwon. Some people do it for the love of English, some people do it for money. I think all of us are doing it for money. Money is the driving force behind any venture that we take up in our society. I've spoken to people who looked me in the eye and said, "Oh, I love teaching." I love teaching too, to some degree, on some days. Not on every day, and not 100% all the way. But the main reason for why I am in the teaching industry here in South Korea is because it's profitable. Let's not kid ourselves, right? It can be, not necessarily always, but so that's one aspect of it. And another reason is that basically this is a skill. Everybody has a skill to offer, right? Like some people work in companies, some people run restaurants, some people study, and some people teach. This is the skill that we are given, or that's the hand we're dealt, I guess. As a native English speaker, we do have the upper hand once we start, but it takes a lot more than just being able to speak the language in order to become an efficient teacher, one that can produce the outcomes that many students are seeking. Okay, so decide on whether you want to start a business. If you do decide to take that path, then the next step would be, I guess, looking for the specific area of where you'd want to start. And there's a lot of stuff that you could probably look into and be very meticulous and very specific about the things that you're looking at. And I'm not necessarily sure that it has to be done to such a very detailed extent. Some of the stuff that I've heard and I've listened to would make you wanna not really start, even consider opening a gombubang or a Hagwon business, because it just feels very intimidating and very overwhelming when you start considering all the information that you should be considering or that you're advised to consider. It almost feels like it's too much, and I could see how many people would be running scared from all the responsibility that is expected, that you're expected to take care of. So for me and my wife right now, us moving forward and expanding our operation, it feels, like I said, in a lot of ways, it feels the way it did feel when we first started our business. And so there are positives and negatives to that. The negatives are obviously having to go through the same emotions again, and the same feelings and the same fears. But the positive is knowing the outcome that came from it, and knowing that the outcome is a positive one kind of maybe helps me personally work through the fears that I may be experiencing and the uncertainties that I'm experiencing while we're working on this new project. Right. Yeah. So the decision of whether I should start a Hagwon is not an easy one, and it's something that each and every individual needs to make for themselves. Gyujone Im. Hello, Jack teacher, one of my students, but I have no idea who you are. Gyujon. Hi. So, as I was saying, it's a decision that you need to make for yourself. You need to decide whether you want to do it, why you want to do it. If it's, you want to spread the love of the English language, great, fantastic. If you want to make a little bit of extra money, fantastic. If it's because you're a good teacher, you're good at teaching, also great. You have to be clear on the reasons for why. Starting any business, whether it's English teaching or any other form of business, you need to be clear on why you are doing it, right? It shouldn't be because I want to start a business. You need to be able to have an idea of what it is that you're going to be doing and why you're doing it, right? And the next step would be figuring out how to do it, how to start a language school. And I guess the easiest way to do it is by opening up a gombubang. If you've been teaching for several years and you've never started a business, but you always thought about doing it, starting smaller might be an advisable idea. And it seems like from what I've heard from the people that I've talked to, I think almost every single person that I've talked to, I've come across, started small with a gombubang. Obviously, people have been teaching, and then they started with a smaller business, and then eventually, after 2 or 3 years of running their own gombubang and having that small amount of experience, kind of is very helpful in starting a larger school, larger English school. Sorry, I'm feeling a little bit talking, man. It kills my throat, clearly. So where was I? My mind's drifting. I only got like 4 hours of sleep last night. I don't know why. Well, I know why, but I feel like I'm not getting enough sleep and my mind is not really able to focus on things too much. There's too much on my mind and not enough space. Okay, a lol. How to start it? Yeah. You need to take action and just do it. Right. Red says he has had his study room for 7 years. And I know that you are doing, I think, something a little bit different. From what I understand, you have several other things on the go. I mean, people have all kinds of different things. So it's up to you really how you want to proceed, right? If you want to open a larger Hagwon, you need to be clear on the fact that it will be a lot of work. There's a lot of work involved in that. A lot more work than there is in running a gombubang, and you need to be prepared and ready for to take on that challenge. If you're happy with running a Hagwon, a gombubang, and maybe you are working on other projects on the side, then that's very reasonable, right? If you are not doing it, if you're not working on anything additional, then you're kind of, I think you're just, I don't want to say stagnating, but you're not really moving forward, right? Bert, you're not the case, because I know that you are working on some fantastic things, and we talked about it, and I know that you have a plan. And the gombubang that you've been running for the past 7 years has not just been kind of a standalone thing. You're doing other things on the side that are, that you have in the works and will become something more. So, for me personally, from my experience, we did run a gombubang for I think 2 or 3 years. And while I was teaching at the university, and the next step was to basically open a Hagwon or just quit the whole thing, quit the whole shebang. And so, I guess on the topic of how to proceed, how to move from a gombubang, from a smaller business to something larger, like a Hagwon, like a language school. That is something that I think many people might find a difficult time with, might find a difficult time doing. It's a playground for my writing. Yeah, exactly. So like you run your small business, you have your small income, which gives you a lot more time to do the things that you are trying to focus on. So you're writing and the other developments that you're doing, right? So, but I think for um, a lot of people are afraid of starting larger things. Anything doing from my so okay, indecision. I wrote down indecision on my notebook here, and I underlined it because I would like to talk about that. Making decisions is a tough decision. It's hard to make decisions, specifically when you have more than one on your hand. Both alternatives look daunting or intimidating. Both have their pluses and minuses, and you simply don't know which one to follow. What I've learned in life is that you need to be able to make a decision and stick with it, and your life will become a lot easier. Prior to us starting a business, we were toying with the idea of going back to Canada. And for months, we were struggling, and I personally experienced agony, like physical pain almost, in having to think about wanting to do things on one hand here, but not being able to completely go through with them, because there was always this thought in the back of my head of, we may be going back to Canada, so what is the point? And it was extremely stressful to not be able to figure out what it is that I wanted to do in the next month, year, forget 5 years, just like within a short period of time, because there was such uncertainty about what it is that we were going to do in life. And it was so stressful. And I remember I finally made the decision. I decided to start a business. I decided to start a Hagwon simply because I have never done it. An opportunity came around. We are in a place that is basically thrives on this particular business, and I decided to just do it. And the moment I did, my mind was locked, and anything else that my wife or anybody else threw at me, if my wife expressed doubts, as in, oh, maybe we should have had, I chose to just push them away. I didn't even want to listen to the maybes, because the moment I made the decision of, when I chose a path, this huge burden just came off my shoulders, and I didn't have to worry about the things that could have happened. I simply focused on the things that I was aiming for, and it just made life so much easier. And ever since then, basically since about 3.5 years ago, that's how I've been living. Whenever I'm faced with an indecision or with a number of choices, and I can't make up my mind on which way to go, I make sure I force myself to choose one. Of course, I think about the alternatives and blah blah blah, but ultimately I make one decision and I dismiss everything else. I dismiss all the alternatives and just focus on that one thing that I decided to do. And it makes life easier. It makes life a lot stressful, a lot less stressful, a lot less stressful. And so this is how you would move forward towards the finalizing of your decision on whether you should start a Hagwon. So you need to be able to figure out whether you want to actually start a Hagwon. Then think about how you would go about it, and then why you want to do it. You need to have some clear reasons for why you are actually wanting to do it. My reasons were that living in Korea is a lot easier. I was already established here. I had, over 10 years of teaching experience. I knew the industry, and so that made a lot more sense. It made a lot more sense for me to continue moving forward in this area than going back to Canada and basically starting from scratch. Clearly, Canada has a lot more positives. One of the main reasons for us wanting to leave Korea was the pollution. But there's so many other pluses, and I know that we could probably discuss this at length with various people and various outlooks and ideas on what Korea is, what it has, what it doesn't. But that was my experience. And these are my experiences. So making a final decision is permanent, not permanent, is important. What's the word for it? I don't know. It's a big fancy word. Good. Okay, so once I decided that I wanted to start a Hagwon, and I kind of in a way convinced my wife, and she was not too keen on it. She's changed her mind now. Like, my wife is a machine, man. She works so hard. She's our school director. She works so hard at the project right now. I'm honestly feel like I'm supporting her. She just does so much more because she's so much more capable. She's so much more important to the business right now than I am. She's taking care of the interior design, the booking of workers, the employees, consulting parents, acquiring clientele. She does so much more. I'm taking care of the teaching, the curriculum, the books, kind of the internal stuff, and she does everything else, man. She's kind of the heart and soul of the business. Should I start from scratch or buy a Hagwon? Yeah, so this is another part of kind of starting a business. I guess if you want to start a Hagwon, I'm not going to get into details on that because that's a big rabbit hole, and we could discuss on it. But something to consider. I personally like starting things from zero. But I mean, our Shane Hagwon is not something that I started from zero. This was something that was in existence, and I simply brought it to Korea, and we are starting it in Korea from zero, but we're not a bare bones undertaking, not a bare bones startup, so to speak. We're just working on developing what we already have. But there are people who could basically, I've heard of people who purchase Hagwons, existing Hagwons, and it doesn't necessarily only apply to English schools. One of my friends owned a very successful art Hagwon here in the area. She had over 100, close to 200 students, and she decided to sell it. For one reason or another, she was tired. I think she ran it for several years, and she just wanted to switch. She wanted to travel. She was still young. She's still young. And when she sold the business, the person who took over lost, I would say, a quarter of the students that she inherited from my friend, which kind of didn't go down so well with her, but I mean that's expected. But that's something you could consider doing if you are starting a Hagwon. But of course, like anything else, you got to look into the program. You got to look into what it is that you're purchasing, right? Buying into a franchise is a lot less risky. If you go on the internet and you look at statistics, purchasing any franchise, your success rate will be labeled as being a lot higher in terms of percentage of success than starting a business from scratch, from zero. Ups and downs. I think when it comes to income potential, there is a lot more income potential when you start off with a excuse me, my throat is feeling a bit dry. There's a lot less risk involved and a lot more income potential when you start buying to a franchise, simply because of the name that's already involved, the materials that you have, and there's a network of people already working on the business, which allows you to expand your income as well through by other means, sales or whatever. So these are some things to consider. But the first three, should I start a Hagwon? Again, I guess number one would be decide if. And the reasons for why would be the second one. And the how is a lot more daunting, I think. The first two are pretty easy, can be. As long as you make a clear and just make the decision and do it. And then once you do it, once you start it, be like the Trojan that you should be and just follow through. Don't wishy-washy. Don't dig holes in front of yourself. With excuses or with trying to find reasons for why it may be a failure. Once you decide, you need to be clear and know when to jump ship, I guess, if that was necessary. But once you make a decision, don't give in to fear of uncertainty and doubt. You need to be clear on why you started your school initially, why you went ahead with the project, and why you want to continue. If you have a clear vision ahead of you, then you know where you're going. And you just need to focus on that and continue with it. Anything, I think I started saying, anything worthwhile takes a lot of time and a lot of work. Anybody will tell you that, right? Nothing happens over time. And I think the problem that most people experience is that most people, excuse me, most people are simply unable to continue. I think any entrepreneur or any person who's ever started any type of business will tell you that, it's never in a rising pattern. The road to success is not an easy one, from what I read. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not that experienced, but I can see what's happening with our Hagwon, and it's not a steady road. We've had ups and we've had downs. But overall, clearly, we must be on the upside since we are undertaking something new and we're working towards something bigger. Because otherwise, we would not be even considering making that kind of decision, right? You look at the stock markets over the years, there were ups and downs. But if you look at the rise in the stock markets, things have been moving up. And that's pretty much what it is. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of work. Red says having clear vision is difficult because we don't know the future. Yes, it's true. And that's exactly what I mean. We don't know the future, and that's what people get scared of, I think. But you need to have a clear vision of what it is that you want. No, you cannot predict the future, and I guess you could argue that, within the next 5 years, somebody will invent a computer somewhere that will take over the entire English market in Korea, and all the Hagwons will go out of business. Yeah, that's true. But you could live your life like that for anything. You could be living like that for anything and basically never accomplish anything in life, right? So if that's how you want to live, then of course that's something that is your choice. Again, decide if, decide why. If it's scary, then maybe for a good reason, but you have to make the choice. The market's not going to change that quickly. I think if you start a business, if you start your own Hagwon today, in 2 years, you will find that the market hasn't changed that much. You've been in business for 7 years, right? Has it changed? Have things gone downhill? Have you given up completely because you don't know the future? No, you continue to develop. You work on other programs, and you continue to grow in one way or another, right? So, I know that Shane, for example, one of our head offices is in Taiwan, and one of the people who works for for the head office used to own their own chain of Hagwons, and basically when economy was going through some hardships in Taiwan, and a lot of businesses were losing grip on the economy, on their business. A lot of businesses were losing grip on their business. Shane thrived for whatever reason. Maybe people were giving up, maybe people were scared, and having good mentors is essential. Yes, that's true. Having people that can guide you and lead you is very important, right? And Bruno and I had a brief conversation about the seven habits of highly effective people. And I forget the author's name. If you remember it, if you could just type it in, that would be great. Craig something, I think. I've watched some of his presentations, and I think it was Bruno who said, all the people who talk about on the internet, who talk about what's the word? Who try to encourage others and instill a sense of, I can do this kind of attitude. Use similar approaches. Have a clear vision and understand where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish, and don't give up. I mean, things don't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight, and it takes hard work. Stephen R. Covey, thank you. Stephen R. Covey is the man who wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And most of us, me included, for a long time, there's plenty of examples of things that I've started and I've given up. There's plenty of things that I started and I pulled through, and I was successful. With those that I didn't pull through with, to this time I wonder, or sometimes I don't necessarily regret, maybe some, small amount, but there's always this feeling of, well, I could have done it if I only worked a little bit harder, or what would have happened if I had continued with it. And I don't necessarily want to feel like, I don't want to be the one feeling like that all the time. There's some things that I didn't finish, but I want to know that I can complete things. And so I've come into a position in my life where, believe me, the fears that I feel, that I experience with things like what we're doing right now with my spouse they're scary. Things like that are scary. But in the end, I don't know, I look at life and I understand one thing, that it's all just a game. I know it sounds kind of, presumptuous, stupid almost to say that, but if we're not trying to do something bigger than ourselves, if we're not taking risks, then what is the point? I mean, I don't know, maybe some people are very happy living kind of comfortable lives, sometimes I think like, oh, it would be so great just to have a 5 to 9 job and just live like that. Go to the park with my kids. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Some people do want it. Some people just want that peace of mind. And I think, honestly, maybe my wife would like that. But I think part of it wants that. But there's a huge part of her who wants more, who wants a lot more out of life than what we have. And so this is what motivates her. This is what I can see it, that she's working so hard, because the part of her that wants so much more is pushing her towards it. And I think this is what a lot of people lack, or maybe not lack, but they lack the motivation to make themselves understand the need for more than what we have. I don't know if it's, some people might call it greed, some people, I don't know, call it something else, I guess, but I just, I've wasted a lot of time and a lot of money on a lot of stupid things, and investing my time, myself, my time, my money into something that I think is worthwhile and I believe in is probably the last thing that I should consider stupid. I mean, we've wasted time hanging out with friends. Okay, not waste, but I mean, going out and drinking, or just watching television, playing games, just doing stuff that is essentially meaningless, and wasting money on things that are essentially meaningless. But then when it comes to, because they're safe, because there's no repercussion really for hanging out, wasting your time, watching TV, or blowing hundreds and thousands of dollars over the years on drinking, entertainment. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's also no particular repercussions unless you push it overboard. But anytime we are faced with like the possibility of success, but after having to overcome these obstacles, financial obstacles, and maybe emotional burden associated with having to make these decisions, most people shy away. Most people don't want to go that extra mile or take that route because it's unstable, it's insecure. There's a lot more to consider, and it's not as comforting as wasting your time doing other things. And I think most people are not prepared to do that. Most people are not ready to take the risk, or unable to follow through for a long period of time. Just one silly example to give you. Jason Teal, who is a quite accomplished photographer. He's the man who runs the Ulsan online. Has had his pictures photography featured in the National Geographic. Works as a freelance photographer right now. JT was in Korea for a year longer than I have, and I don't know when he started photography. I started photography. Red says, I have taken money from the eating out, drinking budget to fund my writing projects. Well, there you go. Fantastic, man. That's what I mean. Like, a lot of people are not really willing to do that because they think, oh, what if I fail in that? Then I will lose money. But then they have no qualms with taking that same money and just blowing it on booze or good times. You know what I mean? It's a lot more fun to have fun than invest into something that you could potentially lose. So Jason Teal started photography, and when I came in, I started doing photography, just a little bit later. So Jason had a little bit more experience over me, but like literally a year. So in terms of how we were at the photography level, we were pretty similar, and I was really into it. But then, and I was taking decent photographs. Like, you can find stuff on my Facebook site. But over time, I basically stopped. I gradually moved away from that, and I stopped, working on it. I even had a website, Jack Shots. But I gradually moved away from it, while JT stuck with it, and it's been over a decade now. And while initially, clearly his photographs have not been good, because nobody's are at the initial stages, with the perseverance and the time that he put in, invested, and what he continues to do with his photography is astounding. Like, you see his pictures online, and they're mind-blowing. Like, they're really professional, they're really good. And not just show it, but it didn't happen overnight for him. Nothing does. Most people are not able. Like myself, I not gave up, I just moved away from it. But had I continued, chances are I probably would have continued learning, developing as a photographer, and gotten pretty decent at it, which is what JT did. Most people can't do that. Most people can't put in the time. Bruno says, changing your life paradigm is painful and extremely difficult, but once you have changed it a few times and think in retrospect about what you have missed out, that is truly a powerful force. Wait, let me read that again. Changing your life paradigm is painful and extremely difficult, but once you have changed it a few times and think in retrospect about what you have missed out on, what you haven't missed out on, that is truly a powerful force. I mean, like, yeah, I think what you're saying is that switching, foregoing some quick satisfactions, quick fixes, so to speak, and sacrificing a bit more time and changing the way of sacrificing some things along the way in order to reach success or become successful, or at least whatever success means to you. And then looking back at the things that you sacrificed, they're a lot less painful, and you're able to understand that the small sacrifices are actually worth it, because you get to have what you got now, right? I think that's what Bruno's saying. Sorry if I'm a little slow on the uptake. Yeah. And I think most people are just not able, for whatever reason, to pull through. I know that I've given up a lot of times in the past on things, and I think most people are just unable to put in the time and go through with it, because things are scary, they're intimidating, and it's difficult. Most people are not really ready to do these things, man. And so I think most people who are successful, most of the success for people occurs in their 40s. I think a lot more people get to the point, that's the midlife crisis, right? People start thinking like, what am I doing with my life? Where am I going? What's happening? Yeah, I don't know. I think that for me personally, I have a lot clearer vision of where I want to be, where I'm going in my life. Oftentimes, or maybe often enough, I say like, man, if I knew the things that I know now, if I knew these things 20 years ago, life would have been so much better. It would have been so much more fun, so much simpler. I would have had made so many different choices and decisions in my life, but that is not the case. I'm 45, still have presumably about the same amount of time ahead of me, but with a lot more wisdom. So I try to live my life like I've got another 40 years ahead, but already with the knowledge here. And so just, man, if you start something and you fail, shit, try again. If you start something and you succeed, well, then you've hit the gold mine, right? Indecision, man, it's a killer. Indecision is a serious killer. Uncertainty, not being able to make a decision is really tiresome. So this is my advice, and I'm speaking from experience. If you're not sure about things, if you have doubt, you need to figure out what it is you want and choose one thing, choose one path, and stick with it. It doesn't have to be something that like takes up all of your time and all your space and, dismisses everything else from your life. Maybe that would not be the best path. But it has to be something that is not impossible, that is achievable. I mean, a lot of things might appear like they're impossible, but they're really not. You just need to put in the time and persist in doing what it is you're doing, and just do your best, man or woman, and good things will come to you. So they say. That's what people keep saying. I've been busting my balls on the YouTube channel for the past year, over 200 videos, and I look at some channels that have half that and like 100 times more subscribers and views and success. Damn it. Anyway, but I'm still enjoying it. I'm going to continue doing what I do, and I'm going to continue working on the YouTube channel. And hopefully over time, if our Shane Hagwon becomes a lot more established and a lot bigger, which is going to happen over the next year is going to be a nightmare, man. It's going to be so much work. But I don't know. Next 2 years, it's going to be good. And then with time, I'll maybe focus more on the YouTube channel. I don't know. I'm just blabbering. There's just so much. And it's hard to here's the thing. I've chosen a path, and the path is that we are working and developing our business, our franchise, Shane English. That's what we're working. And I'm also working on the YouTube channel. And honestly, it's almost like things are on autopilot. I don't really plan out things as much. it's a stream that's rushing forward, and I'm just trying to make things happen inside of it. And I try to propel the entire existence of the Hagwon stream and the YouTube stream in one direction, just forward. And there's no other things right now. Should we move to Canada? I don't care. No, that's not on the table. Should I even be doing this? That's out of the question. That's not, get those obstacles out of my way, because I'm a train, I'm on a mission. And it makes life easier. I don't worry about things that, what if things go wrong? That's not really something that I need to be concerned with. Because if things go wrong, I will know that they're going wrong. Until then, I don't worry about them. Until things start going wrong, the only thing I need to worry about is how to make things work, how to push things forward, and how to continue this movement of this track that I've taken on. Bruno says, 5 years ago I started working from home. Yeah, and so the question is, do you want to continue with that path? Are you comfortable? Do you want to expand? Or you want to just stay where you are? If you are comfortable, then stay. I would say, think of reasons for why. Why are you comfortable? Is it scary to move out? Maybe it is. But if you feel like you want something more, if you feel like you're capable of getting something more, of doing something more, then why the heck not? Why not step out of your comfort zone and do something more, right? I mean, heck, we live only once. And yeah, I mean, losing money is never fun. Believe me, I've lost a lot of money on one thing or another. Looking back, I regret not having done it earlier, given how easy it was to transition from E2 to F4 earning potential. That's what Bruno said. And there you go. I think a lot of people are afraid of doing things because they're new and they're intimidating and scary when they, what have you got to lose? Dignity? Money? Yes, like I said, losing money is never fun. But I think it's better than going to a casino and losing money there, man, because the casino never loses. But here, we're working in an industry that hasn't really failed since its inception, right? The English language industry. There are businesses that are huge, and when you start a smaller business, there's always things that are coming up and they're intimidating, but heck, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. What I know is that, like I said, this is my mission. I'm on the train and it's moving forward, and I can't really be bothered with what ifs. I don't know what if, because this is my existence right now, and I'm not going to get sidetracked with people telling me, maybe you should have something. Just the other day, my father messaged me saying, do you really need a second school? I don't even know how to answer that. I don't even know how to respond to that. He doesn't mean anything bad by it, but, another person who talked to my wife basically asked my wife, are you able to do that? Are you sure you can afford it? Are you sure you can do this and that? And my wife literally broke down in tears because she's under so much stress, and I know that these things go through her head, but the last thing you want is somebody listening to somebody who spews these things at you, because when you make a decision and it's a hard one, there will be people around who are in their comfort zone, and they feel the need to ask you these, to me, stupid questions like, are you sure you're doing the right thing? I've already made my decision. So when you make that decision, just stick to it. You made that decision for a good reason. You didn't just jump in, hopefully. If you did, then maybe, reconsider. But assuming that you were a half intelligent, a human being with half intelligence, half a brain up there, you wouldn't jumped into something that you're not sure of. Like Bruno, if you're running a Gombu Bank for 5 years, you've been in the business, you know the industry, you're not a person who just stepped in out of the blue and decided, I'm going to start a Hagwon business tomorrow, right? That's not you. Like, you've been doing this for several years and you already have a feeling of it. You know what it's like here in Korea, you know what the industry is like, you know the potential, you talk to people, like, you know, you have connections. This is not a business this is not an industry that's going away anywhere within the next 5 to 10 years at least. So what it will happen to it is it will develop. And so I think as a smart person, we got to go with the flow and continue developing, and that's what we're doing. That's basically why we are transitioning but we're transitioning towards an expansion of our program, because that's what seems to be happening. There is a lack. There is a void when it comes to schools providing kindergarten level education, and a lot of parents are doing that. And when you really stop and think about it, a lot of university students are unable to use English. But I've got kindergarten kids coming here after having spent 3 years at an English kindergarten, and they come to our school because they want to continue using their spoken English. And their English is phenomenal. These kids are like 7 years old. They've never left Korea. Well, they may have gone on vacation and stuff, but I mean, they spent 3 years at an English-speaking kindergarten studying English, and their English is fantastic. So that's what we're facing, right? These are kids. That's the next generation of students here. But the number of the number of Hagwons that are offering kindergarten programs is minimal compared to the number of Hagwons providing testing and stuff. And I think sooner or later, parents are going to wake up to the fact that testing can be done at any time in middle school and high school, but learning to speak takes a lot longer. And kids need to learn how to speak a language early on, not during middle school and high school. You can, but it takes a lot longer. Little kindergarten kids, man, 3 years, and they're fluent. After that, they just need to keep it up, man, and they continue on in a speaking program like ours, and voila. That's why a lot of these kids are coming here, because they want to continue using the language. So that's what we need to provide. That's what you got to keep in mind. Yes. Okay. I think I was planning on being for 20 minutes here. Thank you guys for tuning in and participating and asking questions and contributing. Where's the accent on that? Contributing, right? Okay. This was a lot more than I expected it to be. I stumbled through the points, and we finally arrived here at this emotionally driven train of thought. Hopefully that's helpful. But those are my thoughts. Choose to choose. Choose to make a decision, make a firm one, and stick to it. Life will become a lot easier. And this is not just like in business, but just in life in general. Life is so much easier when you're more decisive, when you make a decision about one thing and go with it. Should I eat toast or bread? Choose one. Don't think, maybe the toast would be better. Just choose one and do it. Thank you, Bruno. You as well. Have a good night, man. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're new here, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to come back next week. This Wednesday, I'll be uploading another video. It could be another climbing video, maybe not. I have a fantastic video about climbing to Shimbulsan, but I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit so the channel is not just all of a sudden all about climbing, right? Because that'd be monotonous. Thank you all for tuning in. Rhett and Bruno and Johnny Im. I have no idea who that is. But thank you for tuning in. Apparently my student. We'll see you next week. Toodles. Oh, yeah. I've been looking for people to come in on the podcast and do interview. and there's some people in the works. Everybody's like busy during the holidays. There's university professors who are like busy with exams preparation. People are getting ready for Christmas and all that stuff. So can't find anybody for the time being. Hopefully over the Christmas, and I'm busy as well. So, but yeah, what are you gonna do? I hope everybody had a good Monday, and I wish everyone a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll see you in the next podcast next week. Peace out.